My name is Tony Rovira, and I'm the Managing Director of Azure Minerals, an ASX-listed company that's focused on developing a nickel, copper and cobalt sulfide project in Western Australia called the Andover Project.
Good to have you over here.
Thanks, mate.
You well?
You're very well.
Good week so far?
Brilliant week, actually, yeah.
Apart from the weather, obviously, awful.
But met a bunch of people that wanted interested in the company, so yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you've kind of got all the right metals in the title, really, haven't you? Yeah. You know, copper, nickel, cobalt, not too bad. But let's kick off first with Mexico. Bit of news there.
Certainly. It was about 2.5 years ago that the company decided to exit Mexico and put our projects on care and maintenance. And over the last year or so, we've been running a sales process, and that sales process has now been fulfilled, completed, and we're in the position now of being able to announce that we have sold all of our Mexican assets to a North American company for a headline number of about $20 million. $10 million of that is cash and $10 million in stock in the new company.
That's rather helpful.
Oh, very nice, yes.
So tell me, why didn't you want to move that forward? I mean, given you've just told us the value is for someone else. Mexico, good history of mining. Yeah,
it was, well, the COVID situation made things very difficult trying to operate between Australia and Mexico, so that was difficult. And also the fact is that I think the Australian market had become a bit tired of our Mexican story, whereas Mexican projects their natural home for those is companies that are listed in Canada, basically. And the companies that are operating down there have a much higher value for their projects than Australian companies. So we figured it was about the right time to sell those projects and get something in Australia and focus on that.
Okay, well, let's look at the terms of that, because if I'm the other company, you now are a potential big overhang for me. So what sort of terms were you able to negotiate in terms of with a share component?
Yeah, certainly. So we'll end up with about 15% of that company, which is not too big and not too small. It's about right. We chose not to ask for board representation. We want to be an independent shareholder from the company. When they do list on the TSXV, we will be watching their activities with great interest because we're believers in the projects. We think those projects are really good. And this company, or the people behind this company, have a fantastic track record of taking underappreciated assets and really working them up and increasing the value. So we'd anticipate that the valuation of our shareholding in that company is going to go up in leaps and bounds.
Right. Okay. So I can see why $10 million is attractive. The same on the shares. Their balance sheet and their people's ability to access capital to advance this project at pace, that's going to be important to you and your shareholders.
Very much so. And this company comes with a very strong track record, and the people and the institutions or the organisations behind them in North America who are funding them are some of the top level investors in that mining space in North America. And in addition to that, they've inherited or they've taken on our Mexican team. So our exploration manager, the exploration geologists, the administrators in the office down there are all transitioning straight away from Azure Minerals to the new company.
Okay, so that's all good news. And we'll talk in a minute about how you're going to allocate that $10 million and what it's going to be able to do for you in terms of generating some creative value. Let's remind people about you, background, what have you done, and
I've been in the mining and exploration business for a long time. It's coming up to nearly 40 years now. In background wise, I'm an exploration geologist and I love exploration. I love discoveries. And I think fortunately in my career, I've been very successful. And personally, I've discovered several deposits, both gold and nickel deposits that have become operating mines. And I've led teams that have made other discoveries that have become mines as well. So I've had a very successful career. For the last 20 or so, 19 years, I've been with Azure Minerals. Immediately prior to that, I spent 8 years with a company called Jubilee Mines. And Jubilee, myself and another geologist called Terry Grammer, we were very fortunate, very successful in finding the Cosmos nickel deposits. And that has become a mining operation that's got a mine life of about 40 years. There's another 20 years of it to go. And that was the highest grade open pit nickel mine in the world. So that's a fantastic tick on the resume. And I love nickel exploration. And it's just, as an exploration geologist, it's wonderful. I don't get out into the field very much anymore. I have a wonderful, really professional and very highly successful team of geologists who are out there looking.
Right. And in terms of like decision making, right? So you're not in the field, but key decision maker. You got the job title for it. So who else are you helped by or enabled by?
Certainly. Our CFO and company secretary is a chap called Brett Dixon.
Right.
And Brett and I have worked together with Azure for probably about the last 15 years.
Okay.
Prior to that, we played rugby together.
Okay.
So it goes back quite a while. And then we have a really good team of geologists and also an engineer who's running the development strategy on the Andover project as well. So Graham Lever, our exploration manager, and James Dornan, our project development manager, are both excellent operators.
Okay, so we're now focused on Australia. That's what the Aussie market's telling you that they want from you. We can put Mexico to one side, and you've been able to monetize it, which is good news. So let's talk about the plan of attack here, right? So we've established copper, nickel, cobalt. Everyone wants to talk about those at the moment. Price is going through the roof, lovely. But your plan on the assets that you've got, how do you take that forward?
Certainly, if I might just take one step back on this one, is that to get the Andover Nickel project, it was not just you don't go to the library and borrow a book. You have to know some people. And so when we made the decision to exit Mexico and focus back into Western Australia, I asked myself, where am I going to get some projects from? And, well, there's one chap in Western Australia called Mark Creasy, who is a highly regarded, well-known and incredibly successful mining entrepreneur and discoverer of deposits. And I rang him up and I said, I've known him for 20 years. And I said, Mark, have you got any projects you'd care to vend into Azure Minerals? And he came back and said, yes, I've got just the thing for you, Tony. I've got a nickel project, and knowing your background, I'd be very comfortable to vend or to sell the project into Azure. So we closed that deal almost 2 years ago, and started drilling within a couple of months, and we hit the nickel and copper mineralisation in the very first hole, and we haven't looked back since.
Okay, and how much do they have own of the company?
So Mark Creasy and his organisation own 40%. We own 60% of the project.
Right.
But Mark also owns 16% of the company.
Okay.
So he's one of our two biggest shareholders, and he also owns 40% of the project, and his 40% is free carried through to the decision to mine.
Okay, interesting. Okay, and just talk about the rest of the register then.
Okay, our largest shareholder, which at about 17%, is a German investment fund called Deutsche Balaton.
Okay,
they are well known in the Australian mining and resources sector because they've invested in probably 30 or 40 different companies, and they've been very supportive, really supportive. They've been our biggest shareholder for over 5 years, and they have been. We've been fortunate enough that they've supported us financially when we needed some fundraising. And it's good to have those two major players on the books, both Deutsche Balaton and the Creasy Group.
Right, and what's the trading look like? Because obviously there's some big chunks there in individual hands or within a fund. Liquidity?
It's variable. There are sometimes, maybe on the back of good news, for example, and then we'll be getting millions of dollars and millions of shares changing hands in a day.
Yeah.
And then if there's a sort of a lack of news flow, perhaps, or a little bit of a dry spell, then it really does slow right down. And so then you might only have a few 100,000 shares trading. So
how's this going to, in your mind, what do you need to do about that? Because for some companies, that can be a problem, right?
Yep.
And for companies of your size, sub $100 million, they're usually saying, right, we need to dump some of these retail guys. We need more institutional in there. You kind of got the reverse issue here, and liquidity is such a big part and component of driving the share price appreciation. So, is there a plan? Do you need a plan? How do Mr. Creasy feel about this? What about the Germans?
Well, I think that both of them are fairly happy with the number of shares or the percentage they hold in the company already.
Well,
and they can't really go a whole lot higher until they get to 20%. So they're quite comfortable with that. In fact, our top 20, I'd have to say, which own about 51% of the company, are quite comfortable because there's almost no trading, no buying or selling by the top 20 shareholders in the company. Almost all of the share trading in our company are the retail investors and the punters.
Right. Do you not feel at some point that may become an issue? And I'm saying, do you have a plan for it, or are you happy at it?
Well, part of the plan is always to go out and talk to the institutions and talk to the funds managers and high net worth individuals, etc. And that's one of the reasons I'm here in London, is to talk to some of those people. And it's always part of the strategy to try and bring them on board. And sometimes it's successful, and sometimes it's a bit slower.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. We'll come to the project in a second, back to the project in a second. So I've got to talk to you about specifically the sorts of conversations that you've been having here and the sorts of questions you're being asked, right? Because that usually you get some clues as to what people are concerned about. So what sort of companies and institutions were you meeting? What were they asking you?
Probably the two biggest questions would be, firstly, you own 60%. How can you get to 100%?
Right.
And that is, we have an agreement with Mark Creasy that his 40%, he will sell it into Azure when the time is right, when the value has been maximised, and we will acquire his 40%, and that will take us to the 100% project ownership. So that's one question. The other one is probably, you've got yourselves a really good-looking nickel and copper project. You've got resources. How quickly can you get it to the development and the operational stage?
Okay.
And I go, like, okay, well, so that's something, and here's the timeline. You know, it might be maybe 3 to 4 years from now.
Yeah.
We could be in construction or even in production.
Right. Okay.
So those are the two really biggest questions.
Okay, so 40% you can... Well, how does that work? When you say, when it's reached, what number, what mechanism? 'Cause that's a big
there has to be a valuation of
Sure.
it. And Mark Creasy has in the past has operated under exactly this scenario with another company, for example, called Sirius, which he owned 30% of the project and 30% of the company. They went out and had a massively good nickel and copper discovery called Nova Bollinger, which is now in production. And so Sirius bought Mark Creasy's 30% with stock in the company. So his 30% and ownership in the company went to, say, 50%, and then IGO came and took them out.
It's a managed process.
So this is the sort of the process. This is the scheme that we're sort of operating under at the moment.
Perfect. Okay. And then, we'll jump straight back to the project then. In that case, obviously. Right. So you, cash at the moment, good.
Yep.
Good enough to do what?
We've got enough cash to carry us right through the process of both doing exploration and resource definition drilling for about the next 12 months, plus also a scoping study or a PEA, preliminary economic assessment, which is underway at the moment, which is probably going to be finished in the first quarter of next year. Okay. So we've got enough cash to go all the way through there. However, you never say never, and if the right opportunity comes along to raise money at an appropriate price, then we'll certainly look at it.
Not going to be anytime soon, is it? This market is awful for everyone.
Yeah, it is. That's right. And that's why having sold the Mexican assets and getting another $10 million coming into the company is very important.
There you go. Do you find because of the timing of the Mexican deal, it's like a case of actually just delighted to any kind of deal there, or you could have got more if the market had been like, say, it was 2 months ago? I mean, do you know what I mean? It swings and roundabouts because it...
Very much so. We negotiated the commercial terms of the deal in last September.
Yeah.
That's when it was agreed.
Oh, okay.
All right. And since then, the metals prices have gone right up. So perhaps in a few months later, we might have got a higher price. However, the metals prices have come right back off now, and we would have maybe got a lower price now. So, it swings and roundabouts. And at the moment, I'm reasonably happy with the terms of the deal. And I know that the group who are behind the buyer, they are very successful, and they have a good track record of getting the share price in their companies up really high, really quickly. And taking their projects through to the development and operational side. So I see that this owning 15% of this Canadian company gives our shareholders a long-term exposure to a really good upside that's out there.
Nice optionality. So back up to us, Andover PEA first quarter. Can you just give some of the numbers, because you haven't actually told us how many meters or what is existing in terms of resource, etc. So,
all right. So we got on the ground and started drilling in October 2020. So we've been there for maybe a bit over 18, 20 months, and we've been drilling. And we've had either 2 or 3 diamond drill rigs drilling that entire time. No on or off season or anything like that. We've drilled the entire time. We've drilled about 160 diamond holes for maybe 75,000 metres of diamond drilling. So it's been a very big program. Yeah. We have drilled out one deposit, we've called it the Andover deposit. And that's a really nice 4.6 million tonnes at about 1.4% nickel equivalent. And it contains around about 52,000 tonnes of 52,000 tonnes of nickel, 22,000 tonnes of copper, and a bit over 2,000 tonnes of cobalt. So really nice first step in the process. So we've kicked off the scoping study on the back of that. But having said that, we're currently drilling out a second deposit as well, which looks to be much higher grade. Right.
Okay. And what are the magic numbers? Again, helping the audience here understand a commodity perhaps they may not with copper and nickel. Right. So 4 million tonnes is a start, as you said.
Yep.
You need more.
We do.
What are you aiming for?
Probably double what we've got now.
Okay.
And this would be almost certainly a mining and processing operation.
Because of the grade?
The grades are good and the tonnes are good, and also that would generate a mine life of sort of 8 to 10 year mine life.
Yeah.
Producing a commercially substantial amount of nickel and copper each year.
Okay, 10 years is a good life of mine for certain banking terms. You'd want to hear something like that. You're going to expedite the kind of study phase, are you? How do you do? I love the Aussie model of like, let's get into revenue as quickly as possible. It minimizes dilution and shows a route to market. That's great. So what do you do?
So one of the ways that some junior companies operate is that they'll drill some holes, get a good hit, raise some money, drill some holes, get a good hit, raise some money. Yeah. And it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
So what we've decided, we're not doing that. So we have 2-3 diamond drill rigs drilling, and we're doing exploration and resource definition drilling. So both of those types of drilling are ongoing, and they will be for the next 18 months, 2 years. Simultaneously, we've got a parallel pathway running, which is the project development pathway. Mm-hmm. So we've commenced the development studies. So what we in Australia call a scoping study, or North Americans might call a preliminary economic assessment, is underway. We started that with doing the initial metallurgical test work, which we released the results of that last year. And that's excellent, no red flags, can produce really good quality and good grade nickel and copper concentrates. And then we've also carrying out mining studies now, and other technical studies, processing design, things like that, tailings dam constructions. All of those sorts of studies are underway now or have already been completed. And then you've got the sort of the ESG side of things. And so the community and local relations, you've got environment, you've got heritage, you've got infrastructure, all of those things need to be included into these development study programs as well. So all of those are underway. So we've got this two parallel pathways running simultaneously.
Expensive?
Yes and no, but you need to spend money if you want to advance the project in a quick and timely fashion.
Right. ESG, every week, everyone's talking about ESG, polarizing, quite frankly. Not as far as the funds are concerned, though. The funds want to see it, they need to see it. Is it just a tick box exercise?
And as you know, I'm in London for the one-to-one mining conference, and our presentation that I give, the first 2-3 pages is all about community relations and ESG, and because I know how important it is, not only to us but also to the funds. But for us, where we're operating, where the Andover project is located, is in the Western Pilbara region of Western Australia. Mm-hmm. It's not too far away from where there was a serious issue recently with some caves were blown up. Yeah. Well, the same people that have a connection to that land have a connection to our land as well. The very same people, the same families. Yeah. So we have been very careful for the last 2 years to try and build positive relationships with the local Aboriginal community, and we have done that. And we are looked upon in high regard by those local traditional owners, because it is their country that we're operating on. We need to acknowledge that and to look after it as best we can. But I'd also say with the wider ESG, sort of the more global community relations that you need to take into account. As an exploration company over the last 20 years, we're probably implementing all of those anyway, but we just haven't documented in a formal fashion the way ESG is now being documented. So we're already doing those things, but now we document it, we measure it, and then we report on it.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from CEOs. I really do, because it used to be like one token page at the back of the PowerPoint, literally in the appendix, and now it's front and center. And I guess it can be frustrating in the sense that people are saying, "Oh, you should have done this. You should have been doing this always." Well, we have. Yes. Yeah. It's an interesting dilemma at the moment. With regards to obviously the plan over the next 12 months, you kind of laid that out. That makes sense to me. There's a lot of M&A happening out there. Right.
Yes.
You're rushing forward. Do you think there's opportunities to be had out there? Because we talked to a few companies slightly cash constrained, a little bit unsure what markets are doing. They don't have the teams to necessarily raise the capital. Are there opportunities in Western Australia?
Absolutely. There's in all of these sorts of spaces, but particularly at the moment in the nickel and the battery metal space, there's a lot of different size fish. Yeah. And we're not a small fish, but we're not a big fish. So there's opportunities for us to grow and to expand by looking to have some M&A activity with local or nearby companies that are smaller than us. But simultaneously with that, we're also being looked at, and there's rulers being run over us by some of the larger companies in Australia. So this is a dynamic very fluid situation at the moment. But we recognise that the best thing we can do is to both grow our project organically by increasing the resources and advancing the project through the development stage, but also maybe acquiring new lands around us, which have also got potential for more nickel. And that just makes us even more attractive for the really big players.
But I guess that's the point I want to get to when I talk about M&A generally, because your background, geologist, right? And the team you described to me, explorers, that's what you do. Yeah. I know you've got consultants in doing, we'll go through the study phases, etc. But you kind of got to stick to your knitting as well, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're not the guy to get this into production, but you can set it up for that.
I can take this a fair way towards the production side of things, but you're right. I'm not a mining person, although I've worked in mines before. You've got to bring in a mining engineer or a metallurgist, who's someone who's built mines and operated mines, and that person then becomes the CEO, and maybe I transition off to become a technical exploration director or something like that. That's always on the cards. But in the meantime, I'm having so much fun at the moment making discoveries, and our geological team are making discoveries on a weekly or monthly basis out there. Right. So this is a really dynamic time. It's an exciting time for us.
It is an exciting time, but also this company's been around in various guises for a long time here. So what I want to understand is, so what's the model here? We'll work Azure up into a point where it's attractive to someone else. We'll flip that up, as you've just done in Mexico, monetize that for our shareholders, but continue with the discovery exploration component. Would you feel that you would need to give it all away, give the exploration upside away as well?
Oh, no, you're never going to give away the exploration upside, not as an exploration geologist.
Yeah.
But, not anyone, but it is possible for non-mining people to build and operate a mining project. My previous company that I worked for, Jubilee Mines, the CEO and executive chairman, Kerry Hamanis, was a lawyer. And he built one of the most successful nickel mining companies Australia's
with the right people around him,
with the right people. You hire the right people, and that's what we're starting to do.
Okay.
We are hiring the right people, but in time, those right people, the right person will probably step into my shoes to make sure that this project transitions from being an exploration resource definition company through to a actual mining company. And then, as I said, I can go back to what I love doing, which is making discoveries.
Okay. Like I said, the last 2 months haven't been pleasant for mining or anyone else, quite frankly, in the public markets. For your shareholders, for people looking into this story might be attracted to it, let's give them some short-term catalysts which you hope might make a difference, if you think anything will make a difference in this market. So what's that look like?
Well, you can't give up. You have to keep trying to put the good news or any news into the market.
Yeah.
And we do have lots of news flow coming. For example, we're continuing to drill. And so we're making discoveries, and we're hitting good nickel in most of the holes that we're drilling. But we're also completing the metallurgical test work, the more advanced stage, that will be released. The mining study will be released, with some nice images of what the ore body looks like and the underground mining access and declines and stopes and things like that. And then there's all the other aspects of the scoping study. So there is a lot of technical details to be come out over the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay, and what I know you kind of copper, nickel, cobalt is in order of value. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would probably be 70% of the value would be in the copper.
Right.
Probably 20 in the. Sorry, let me rephrase that. 70% of the value would be in the nickel, 20% in the copper, and 10% in the cobalt.
Okay. Interesting. I guess that helps define who could be interested in this project. There's a few nickel projects coming through, but as a kind of byproduct of gold exploration, it seems.
True. Yes, that's right. There's not that many new nickel projects out there. In Australia, for example, there are the producers, then there are the junior explorers, and then in between that is us. And we're in a case almost of our own at the moment, where we are well past the exploration stage, just as an exploration company. We're not at the production stage, but we're in that project development stage, which is a good place to be because it makes us different from everyone else.